Maybe it's because I'm 23 years young. Maybe it's because I'm the sexiest black YouTuber. Maybe it's because people have literally paid me to date their daughters. I don't know why people tend to ask me if I want kids or how many kids do I want or do I envision myself having kids. The answer is always going to be the same at this current moment. I don't know because I'm 23 years old. I'm worried about building my finances as the doctor, professor, philanthropist, gynecologist, veterinarian, vegan extraordinaire, McDonald's protester, bacon connoisseur, dildo expertise, cafeteria lady with the big double D titties on Wednesdays, and professional dog walker on Saturdays. I am not at the current moment focused on having little Leon Jr. But if I did, a video like this would concern me.
I will often know that they are transgender from the moment that they have any ability to express themselves, and parents will often tell us this. We have parents who tell us that their kids, they knew from the minute they were born practically, and actions like refusing to get a haircut or standing to urinate, trying to stand to urinate, refusing to stand to urinate, trying on siblings' clothing, playing with the quote opposite gender toys, things like that. There is more and more a group of adolescents that we are seeing that really are coming to the realization that they might be trans or gender diverse a little bit later on in their life. So what we're seeing from them is that they always sort of knew something was maybe off and didn't have the understanding to know that they might be trans or have a different gender identity than the one they had been assigned. So that is a growing population that we are seeing, and that's being recognized as being trans and able to be treated.
Now, I have what is known as the trans kid indicator, and we're going to go through all of the things this professional doctor listed to see that if I were to have a kid and they were to have these things happen in their child life, that means that I should be considering going through the process of having that child transition into the opposite gender. So everybody, let's pretend for a moment I had little Leon Jr., who's a boy and he's about 6 years old, and he's getting ready to start kindergarten, and he walks in, it's a Saturday morning, he watched his cartoons, he ate a Pop-Tart, he did all those things, and he says, "I'm excited for kindergarten, Papa." And I look at him and say, "Well, you have an ugly looking hairline, little boy. It's time for you to go get a haircut." And he looks me dead in the eyes and say, "Oh, I don't want to get a haircut." That's obviously a sign that he's thinking about being the opposite gender, right? No. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in T as for not transgender right there, standing to pee. Now, I don't know if you know this about any of these little children, but they're not really tall. They have to go through the extra effort to pee in the toilet or in a diaper. So if a child goes into the bathroom and they can't reach the toilet, they have to get up there and squat and pop and poop and shit and do all these things so that they can get all that excrement out their body. That's not really something comparable or anything to consider when discussing if your kid is the opposite gender. So we're going to put NT for that as well. Same thing with refusing to stand to pee. Now, I presume this has to do more with having somebody who's just a little bit taller. And let's go with the prevailing assumption that this child is not 5 years old anymore. Let's say they're about 11 years old. They're a little bit taller. Now they can actually stand or refuse to stand to pee. There's nothing there that indicates you are thinking about being the opposite gender. Maybe you're lazy. Maybe your legs hurt. Maybe you just have to shit and you also have to pee at the same time. These are not factors that coincide with being a transgender kid. So we're going to put NT for that as well. That's not trans. So far, we're 3 for 5. Playing with gendered toys. I, as the 23-year-old sex stallion that you're watching right now, used to play with Batman's, the Static Shock action figures, the Spider-Man action figures. Occasionally, I would have a McDonald's Happy Meal, and I would open that McDonald's Happy Meal, and out pops a My Little Pony. Now, the reasonable thing for a fucking 8-year-old at the time to do is to walk all the way back to McDonald's and say, "You gave me a girl toy." No, the option is either throw it away or get every single one of my action figures that I had and we beat up the My Little Pony. Why? Because we didn't like horses at the time, because we were afraid. This is also not an indicator that somebody is potentially a transgender child. So we're going to put in T for that as well. Now, this is the more controversial one. Putting on the opposite gender's clothes. This is something that a lot of people see nowadays because you have grown men wearing dresses, you have grown men wearing skirts, you have little kids going around their mom's closet and seeing a bra and being like, "Ooh, what's this cup?" And they put it on their eyes or they bite it, they do all this weird shit. This is also not an indicator for somebody being a transgender child or should being in the position or the obligation to start changing their gender. It is a child seeing clothes and thinking, "Oh my God, I could wear these." Imagine right now, little Leon Jr. walks in my room at this very moment with his mom's bra and is like, "Hey, look what I got on." I'm not gonna look at the child and say, "Oh my God, you might be a girl inside." I'm gonna say, "Take your fucking mama's bra off, you sicko." So we're going to put NT for that as well. The point of doing this process is to not say, "Hey, you should be ashamed of your child for all these things that they're going through." It's also not to say, "Hey, transgender people, you're gross and weird and no one likes you." It's to say none of that. It's not to do any of that whatsoever. I know somebody's going to cry and say I'm transphobic, but listen carefully to what I'm about to say. That doctor, and by proxy, anybody else who says anything in agreement to that, does not understand one key factor. Children are dumb. All of them. I don't care that your son or your daughter or your nephew or your uncle's child decided that they were going to be smart one year and make the honor roll. They're dumb. They don't have life experiences. You can't look at a child and see them do one thing and immediately think it's time for something drastic. You have to let the kid grow. You can't just make these spur of the moment decisions. Why? Because in that moment, you could think, "Hey, this is a great idea. This is something that the child could want. This is something that the child could need. This is something that the child aspires to be," but in reality, it's not. And later down the line, they might regret this and wonder, "How the fuck did I get to this point?" I know the statistic for that is not drastic, but when you're having that conversation about transitioning, you would want to have the conversation that is both positive and both negative.
Yeah, what's good, y'all? So, I want to talk about something real serious real quick with y'all. If you're a transgender male, please keep watching. If you're not, keep watching. I still need the views. You know what I'm saying? But no, on the real. If you're in your journey where you're considering getting phalloplasty because you feel like your body dysphoria is really bad to the point where you don't want to live life with a part that you don't like, please consider other options before jumping into phalloplasty. Because I'm not saying, well, not that. I'm not telling you what to do with your life. I'm just saying from my own personal experience. I started phalloplasty back in March 2020, and we are in March 2022, and we're not even halfway through the process. To put it lightly, the past year has been them trying to fix their F up. I have a fistula, which is an abnormal connection between my urethra and my rectum, meaning the P-tube is pretty much going through my rectum, which is causing ongoing UTIs, urinary tract infections. And so when I had surgery back in July is when they tried to first fix the fistula from going from above. And so that gave me an ostomy bag at age 27. At age 27, I am pooping in a bag. Right. And this past week and a half ago, went back in for another surgery to try to fix the same issue, but this time going through the rectum. And so now after that, I had 2 catheters put in, a Foley and an SP. And the Foley catheter is out. The SP we're still rocking with, sadly, to this day. But my warning is that as much as we want to think our transition is about the physicality and making sure that we look the part, there's so much more than to being a man or a woman than how we appear. And I wish I knew that back before I had the surgery, because I feel like now I'm living with these issues. I have a hard time getting close to anyone because I feel like during these past 2 years, I've lost a lot of people, whether it's through like falling out or death or so forth. And so I'll continue this on part 2. So stay tuned. Alright, what's up? Welcome back. So continue what I was saying in regards to phalloplasty. It's something that like you need to sit down with yourself, get a pen and paper, and make a pro and con list. The pros of getting the surgery and the cons. But just know there's more cons than pros, in my honest opinion. Because it's kind of like, yeah, like it's cool to look down and see you know, but it's just the fact that 2 years later, I still don't have full feeling. I'll go in for an exam or do testing, and they're like, oh, we're going to grab the phallus, we're going to do this, that, and fourth. And despite them telling me they're going to do it, more than half the time, I don't feel them touching down there. And to me, it's a concern because if I can't fully feel when someone touches me, I'm not going to get anything out of it at all. Especially when it comes to anything like, you know, intimate, being like physical with a partner or whoever. I want to be able to live in the moment and enjoy it. I feel like before, the main reason why I pretty much ran into phalloplasty in the first place because of the fact that a few years back, before I moved to the LA area, I got sexually abused by this gay dude I met off an app that claimed that he wanted to be friends, that he was new to the area, he was in town, he moved out here to be an EMT and so forth, and went to the bar, got some drinks, and yeah. And so, long story short, that was a very traumatic experience for me, to the point where, from that night on, that genitalia bothered me to the point where every time I would shower, I would break down. Just thinking about the fact that I had that down there would really, like, you know, like, give me anxiety. And so I feel like I still kept that part for a few years after that incident. But after that incident, sex became less enjoyable. I didn't really like being touched. And so it was hard, you know, trying to date and be intimate when I knew I didn't really want to be touched like that, but I didn't want to be weird. And so when I would date women, I would allow them to touch me, but deep down, I wasn't fully comfortable. And so I feel like the reason why I got the surgery in the first place is based off trauma. But now I pretty much surpassed that trauma, and now I'm dealing with surgical trauma. And so let's keep going to the next video. Alright, this is gonna be the last part of this little series. So basically, to wrap it all up, phalloplasty for me has been very traumatizing in the sense that I've undergone over probably 12 surgeries these past 2 years. I underwent a lot of like mental fuckery, physical fuckery, but mostly mental. I feel like most surgery, in my opinion, or anything in life is a mental fuck more than physical, because I feel like physical, you might be, you know, in pain or sore for a few days, but like, you know, the pain's not forever. Compared to anything mental, aka trauma as well, it sticks with you until you learn to either cope with it or surpass it or to pretty much push it under the sheets for the time being. And so every day for me personally, I'm reminded of my trauma through phalloplasty, because I look at my arm every day and I see this. I did start to tattoo over it, but you can still see the difference. Like, it's not normal, you know what I'm saying? So between, like, you know, having like this big scar on my arm, having an ostomy bag that I'm pooping into at 27, having a catheter on and off for the past 2 years, long as I had it for, I think it was like 10 months. And so even having just a catheter for me is traumatizing because it's not pleasant. It's very uncomfortable. It makes you feel very, I don't want to say insecure, but definitely more self-conscious. Because you're like, okay, is my bag gonna leak? Do I smell? Should I shower again? I know I just showered, but should I shower again? So all in all, if you're having body dysphoria and you don't feel comfortable in your body, just know that yes, there is surgery, but there's other methods you could try out as well. There's realistic prosthetics you could use. There's all kinds of like, you know, like sex toys you could use to get you pleasure as well. And all in all, like, don't feel like no one's gonna love you because you don't have a certain part. If someone don't want you based off your body, they don't deserve you. So just remember that. All in all, for all my trans friends, women, men, be kind to yourself today, tomorrow, and every day. And just know that you're beautiful in your own way. You are handsome, you are loved, you are appreciated, and your life matters.
So I'm going to get into trans and mental delusion and everything because it's been called that before. When I was in my early 20s, I lived in Olympia, Washington, and I had a girlfriend at the time, and she told me, "You are a boy." And I was like, not so sure about that. But she pressed it enough. She's like, "Look at the way you dress, look at your mannerisms, look at the way you talk." I'm like, okay, well, I still talk the same. Still have these same mannerisms. I mean, today I wear boots and jeans. With them I wear girl pants, you know, like Miss Me's Rock Revivals, you know, etc., etc. Doesn't matter. But she was damn convinced. Yeah, you're a guy. So I went with it, wrote this like page essay that she wanted me to write as to why you are. I started binding. I went with this stupid different name. I still remember it. It's dumb. And, you know, went with that little acceptance. Yeah. And that was in my early 20s. Once I broke up with her, got away from those friends, I wanted nothing to do with that. And I immediately stopped. And I thought I was so glad that I am who I am today. Thank God. Oh my gosh. Really enjoy just being me. I look at the younger generation today and what they're doing to kids and how easy it is for their minds and to just flop that. And it's like a mental delusion, because I was a full-ass grown adult convinced by one person, their friends supported me, and it was like instant. Fine. Okay. And if I hadn't have gone away from that, I have no idea what would have happened. I don't. So do I think it's a mental delusion? Yeah, I do. Are there people who are trans and so, well, you know what? Fine. But I really do feel like it's not okay. And especially for the younger kids, especially, it's not okay. They're way too young. If that happened to me in my early 20s and I was convinced that quick, imagine these younger kids with just like a single teacher telling them, "You are not a boy, you're a girl," or the other way around.
I started transitioning, taking testosterone my sophomore year of college, and I stopped transitioning about a year ago, so I've been off hormones for a year. I've been off testosterone. Now I take a little bit of estrogen every day to kind of, you know, quote, get my body back to normal. But I started noticing things in my daily life like, I'm gonna put off this testosterone shot, and then it would end up, you know, I would just never take it, and then I would take it weeks later, and my hormones would just be horribly off balance. You know, I started to, you know, dress a certain way and was like, oh, this is more comfortable. I stopped, you know, binding. I never wanted top or bottom surgery. You know, I kind of had this idea every day of like, I used to be so much happier as just a bush lesbian, you know. And then, you know, I would think back to, you know, why did I transition in the first place? And, you know, it kind of always came down to like, wow, I was really lost at the time. I was in an abusive relationship with my ex-girlfriend and with her parents, who highly influenced me to think that, you know, if I was a man, my life would be better. My relationship would be perfect. All of our problems would go away. And that's not the case. And that's also not to say that I didn't kind of exhibit other traits of like being transgender, but, you know, that's kind of what it came down to. There was a lot of, I guess, pressure, and I was just lost. And I'm not saying that, you know, being transgender isn't real or anything like that, but, you know, I just kind of wanted to open up the conversation and answer any of your guys' questions. I would love to talk to you guys about it. I identify now as just a gender fluid lesbian, and I've never been.
I am not against any grown adult deciding, damn, I feel as though I'm a man, but I feel in my heart I'm a woman, and you transition. Do you live your life? Me, sexiest black YouTuber, professional shit talker, is not going to discourage you. What I will discourage is looking at a bunch of children who have no experience in life and saying, hey, that child is acting like a little girl, or that girl is acting like a little boy because she walks around wearing all black and jeans and hoodies, so obviously she's a tomboy and it's time to make the transition. Let those kids grow up, and if they start thinking these things, if they start doing things that actually bring the personification of they're the opposite gender, let them grow a little bit more, wait till they're a legal fucking adult, and then make that transition. Because guess what? People's minds change throughout time. They may do something they think is right 1 minute, and then later down the line they think it's absolutely wrong. There's literally people out there who have transitioned, who have regretted it. There are people who have had operations done on them that they thought was a good idea, and it leads to medical complications. You have to consider all these factors when you're going around saying, hey, this person feels as though it's time to transition, or this child should transition because they're playing with opposite gender toys, or they're wearing skirts, or they're not refusing to pee standing up, or they're not wanting to get a haircut. These are not indicators that you should be making that drastic of a decision. And yes, it is drastic. Changing somebody's fucking sex, gender, whatever you want to call it, is drastic, especially when they're young. I get it. You want to have more people included in society. I get it. You sit in these rooms and you're teachers and you have nobody on your side, so you just want to bend the rules so that a bunch of 9-year-olds make you feel good. That's cool. But to push that and advocate that for children to start doing when they have no grasp of the world is fucking stupid.
All right, I need to know if any parents of young kids have had this same experience. So we just took my 3-year-old son in the doctor for a checkup. My 3-year-old son. Okay, there's a reason why I'm emphasizing that, and you're about to know why. So my wife and I are waiting in the room with our son, and the doctor comes in. And he sees my son sitting there on the table, and the first question that he asks him is, are you a boy or are you a girl? And I look at my wife like, what the f-? So luckily my son understands obvious tenets of biology at 3 years old, and says that he's a boy, just like his chart says. So the rest of the appointment I can't even focus because I'm wondering why in the world this guy is asking the question. And then I remember, oh yeah, I live in California. And call me paranoid, but this is where I think we're heading based on other things that have happened. An Ohio couple lost custody of their teenager for refusing them hormone treatment. And a divorced Texas couple were in a court battle over whether or not to let their 7-year-old transition from a boy to a girl. And many are saying that the new proposed Equality Act could lead to more parents losing custody of their kids who want gender transition. So again, call me paranoid, but I'm wondering if the doctor is asking the question of my son to see if he can establish a pattern over time that shows that my son wants to be a girl. But here's the thing, my son is 3. I'm not even going to let him choose what he wants for dinner. And some days, my son thinks he's a dinosaur, but I'm not going to let him transition to a dinosaur. And being in California, this is probably going to happen to people like me first, but I don't think it's going to be long before we start seeing parents lose custody of their young kids because they're not letting them transition to the opposite gender. And I think pediatricians are going to be the ones who are going to start calling it out.
The ways in which states intervene with parental authority. So after all, for most of the history of liberal democracies, liberal democratic societies, parents psychologically harming their children wasn't considered a matter for the state to deal with at all. There are large gaps then in appropriate measures to protect children not of age to protect themselves. In the United Kingdom, for instance, new Cinderella legislation was recently ratified, and this is aimed at protecting emotionally abused children and punishing their perpetrators. Parliament member Robert Buckland had this to say about the legislation. Our criminal law has never reflected the full range of emotional suffering experienced by children who are abused by their parents or caretakers. The sad truth is that, until now, the wicked stepmother would have gotten away scot-free. So Buckland's statement well exemplifies the legal gap when it comes to protecting children from non-physical forms of abuse. So whether the parents fully understand it or not, transgender children going through puberty of their own gender is harmful in this special way. So as we've seen, refusing puberty blocking treatment prevents immediate and intense psychological harm, and second, it causes lasting and irreversible physical harm. So we can compare the parents of transgender children opposed to physician-recommended treatment to naturalist parents. So parents who misuse traditional or mistrust traditional Western medicine. Regardless of whether these parents have good intentions, these children are often at risk of harm. So in various cases, the courts have ruled that naturalist parents are required to treat their children according to traditional principles of Western medicine. Not only that, but they're criminally liable if they don't do so. So arguably a similar case could be made with the parents of transgender children.
And I know what somebody's going to say. Oh, actually, Leon, you don't understand. Children do understand the complexities of gender and sex and gender affirmation and sex personification and sexual orientation. You're just being a bigot. If that's the case, let a child take a loan out. Let them file for bankruptcy. Let them buy a gun. Because if you're going to make that excuse for one thing, somebody else could see that and make that same excuse for others. For the love of God, this is not even something that's supposed to be controversial, but because too many people are too emotionally invested in wanting to be right, they don't understand where they are fucking wrong at. You have more people going around and saying what I've detailed in these past few minutes is transphobic, it goes against trans kids, I'm hurting trans kids. No, I'm letting children, boys, girls, its, shits, hims, hers, misters, misses, grow so that they can develop the thought in their own minds by themselves, not a bunch of people pushing it on them so that they can feel good about having some inclusive household. It is weird. It is gross even. It is just something that's disturbing to I. And if you agree, fine. If you don't, fine. At the end of the day, I just want to see people grow up and develop their own thoughts, not be pushed into doing something drastic that really wouldn't be beneficial to them. And I know I'm probably transphobic to about 5 of you, but understand something. If you're not going to understand what I just said and you're just going to cry neener, or if you're only going to watch 1 minute and say, damn it, he offended me, or this video offends me, or if you're going to go on Twitter and say, oh, he just offended me by saying all these things, you're not listening to what I'm saying. So I'll say it one more time in a clear-cut, concise manner. I don't hate transgender people. I am not against somebody who's a grown adult saying, hey, I'm a man, but I feel like I'm a woman. I don't really put too much stock in all the pronoun things. It's either I'm going to say them or I'm going to say your full name, or if I can't keep up with all the zers and the pickers and the its and the shits, I'm not going to address you and I'm just going to keep it walking. And if you can't do that, that's perfectly fine. You are not me. I have more of the ability to just ignore people. I am not against any of you in any capacity. Yes, I will criticize the 5 bad apples that go around touching children and violating their own mothers, but I'm not against the entirety of the transgender community. So when I say this, it's not out of a place of hate, it's out of a place of fucking concern, because some of you are fucking weird trying to get more kids to transition. That's not really how that's supposed to go. So if you're that butthurt about it, I can't do anything else except say, oh well, this is the internet. It's an opinion. You don't like it. Boo-hoo. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see y'all in the next one. Goodbye.